Hello and welcome to Business Today. I am Siddharth Zarabi, and with me here at our studio at the World Economic Forum in Davos is Rajiv Memani, the chairman of the India region and Emerging Markets Committee at EY. Welcome to the show, Rajiv. Davos 2025 underway, time of some concerns, especially in the United States with the new administration coming in. But I want to begin by getting your sense for our viewers. What are you picking up from counterparts and other CEOs with regard to how the US economy is likely to shape up, how the growth impulse there is going to pan out?
Yeah, obviously, as Siddharth, everyone would have told you, I think the overarching theme in Davos this year has been the various announcement statements by President Trump. And different people have had different reactions to that, also depending on what geography you're in. But I would say I've never seen a greater sense of optimism, at least in the last 3-4 years, amongst the US businesses and the US CEOs. So they have been very, very optimistic, and I can see a much stronger pivot to growth than what I've seen before. So in the last 2-3 years, there were issues around. Last year was growth will be very slow. The year before was, will we have growth at all? But this year, at least amongst Europeans, obviously there has been a reaction to various statements that have been made, and that has had some impact on business sentiment as well here. But I would say overall, just if I keep the sort of country lines off, I would say overall sort of greater sense of optimism in the way things have panned out and in the way people are looking at the next 12 months.
Rajiv, Indian CEOs, what is the mood in them as 2025 has begun? Are they optimistic equally about growth, or are there areas of concern?
No, I would say Indian CEOs are optimistic. I don't think I haven't seen anyone who is pessimistic. I think the Indian macroeconomic story is strong, fundamentals are strong. Yes, the last few quarters have seen more headwinds on growth than what people had anticipated, and the reasons of that are sort of well known, well documented. And a lot of them are things that have been addressed and probably will be addressed. So I think companies are continuing to move forward on a growth path, growth agenda. Balance sheets are the strongest that they've ever been, and so I don't think that's a concern, that's a worry at all. The thing that I think the Indian CEOs I would think are looking at, one is, if there is some impetus that is given to consumption, I think that is something that they're looking at. I think everyone will be listening to the budget speech, and the second is the ongoing. One of the good things that the government has done is, as you know, Siddharth, they have pushed a lot on the capex side. It slowed down a bit because of the elections and everything. But the general sense is that the government is his promise of deregulation, simplification. So I think India has been on a path of ease of doing business, but if that process and that journey can be accelerated, and we can have greater levels of deregulation, simplification, I think that will give greater impetus and speed to the growth and the investment journey for Indian companies.
Interesting you mention speed, because I had the IT minister of Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, both in conversations, and one of the key focus points that they make is speed of doing business.
Yeah.
What are the areas of concern that you feel need to be addressed in the months ahead from the government with regard to that? Is it centered around logistics, approvals? Could you specify?
I think it's a lot around approvals. I think a lot of it honestly has to be done at the state levels. I would say if there's good coordination between center and state, I think that's always very helpful. The real thing is how India syncs up with some of the global value chains. And and if the industrial clusters that we talked about in the last budget, if those industrial clusters can be created, and those industrial clusters, availability of land, availability of infrastructure services that are required on manufacturing at reasonable, at high quality, reasonable prices, if they can be provided at speed, and then on a structured basis, if we can get players to participate and the entire supply chain to be there, I think that is something that is required for a just from a, when I'm talking of simplification, speed, ease, I think that is there. Otherwise, just acquisition of land, taking all the approvals, and then in some of the industries, the uncertainties on tariff structure, duty structure, what's happening in some of our, with some of our other global countries who have built massive capacities, and the commodity prices are really, some of the pricing that we have seen in the global markets, they are really getting impacted because of that. So if there is agility in how you respond to that, whether it's in terms of, some on anti-dumping duty or some kind of tariff, this thing, I think if we can create some of that ecosystem.
I think the steel sector is
true for many sectors.
True for that. In fact, SBI Chairman Mr. C.S. Setty, who was here earlier today with us, made a specific mention of steel, and I think it's a concern that across the board people are talking about. I'm glad you also make this point.
And if you go to each and every sub-component, the government, it wants to increase value added on electronic components. Now, those industries are very matured. There's a very targeted pricing that happens there. So, then for someone to commit $50 million, $100 million of investments is very tricky. So how do you give a longer term, some level of comfort around, this is what the tariff structure will be at least for some time. And then companies can say, okay, and that's how value addition increases. And once things come back, once production starts, everything starts, generally things kind of move on and harmonize.
Rajiv, if you were told to prepare the next version of Make in India, what would its blueprint look like?
See, I would say India, one thing I must say, Siddharth, I met a lot of companies who are setting up manufacturing in India here, or those companies who already have manufacturing in India. And I would say most of them, it has taken them more time to kick it off and speeden it than what they thought. But once they've gathered momentum, I think the cost structures that they're looking at, the quality of management teams that they've built up, it takes time to build that. The level of automation that they are able to achieve, the speed at which they are able to deliver, the agility has been very good. So the good news is all of them who have set up in India are actually very happy with the results that they are getting in India. So I think for India to succeed, the two areas that I would really focus on, continue to focus on, is on looking at each and every individual parts of the global value chain and see how across ministries India can align and have a joint policy or joint clear view on those value chains. And so for example, if aerospace and defense is one, we are making good progress, but these are the 15 components, these are the 20 big companies, this is what we need to do, this is how we need to do, these are the 3 states, or these are the 10 districts where we want to build that out on a scale because there is logistics competitive advantage or whatever else it is. So you take it to that level of detail. I think that's what is required. The second is energy transition. Again, you can see the scale of which private sector investment is happening. But in various components of energy transition, if we can work across the 4 or 5 ministries that get impacted in that and have a policy, whether it's on EV hybrid, whatever it is, and the supply chain components of that, there's minor tweaks that are required on the hydrogen, renewable, electrolyzers making good progress. So if I look at the entire value chain piece of that, that's where a large number of investments will happen, and that gives a very significant competitive advantage to India. In fact, it's very important for India to succeed. If especially as per capita incomes grow, it's very, very critical that we build that value chain for ourselves.
Continuing wearing your consultant's hat, clean energy, one of the mega trends, associated with it, automation and other improvements. But if I were to ask you to pick up for the benefit of our viewers, any other mega trends that you see playing out in India in the medium to long term?
I would say the digital stack that has been built in India, I think that journey and how that works along with the AI piece that we are building and the impact of that on the business, I think that is something that we really need to look out and watch out for.
Okay.
And I think that's something that I would say that we should outside of energy transition, clean energy, manufacturing in India, the captive story is really playing out very well. So every company that you meet has a capability center in India. They are very happy with the output of the capability center. They want to see how they can accelerate the presence of the capability center, how can they integrate more and more of that. So that story is now gathering wind, momentum, and generally feedback is almost phenomenal. But I'm most excited about the India stack, and we have seen the entire startup ecosystem actually built on that. And as the AI layer starts coming in,
and that model is getting exported to other countries.
Other countries as well, yeah.
As we wind down this conversation, I want to turn the focus in the last bit to tax policy.
Yeah.
Both on the direct and the indirect tax side. Direct tax side, there is a lot of demand for some sort of income tax relief on individual taxation. But for corporates where that lower tax rate scheme had a sunset, you think it would be useful to bring it back and perhaps also apply to brownfield?
See, Siddharth, my view is there is finite level of money that the government has. So if I have to figure out what is the most optimal usage of that money, I would say, providing things that will give consumption relief and also putting that in the capex, government spending in capex, and the relief that's being needed in rural India, or to ensure that we have a more sustainable growth. I would say that will be better. The impetus that is needed is much more through PLI schemes, very targeted subsidies and everything else. I think that is, the tax rates in India are quite moderate. And when people are looking, yes, you can always have, because your investment thesis gets even better.
Yeah.
But in this case, I would say that given the amount of money that we'll have, if we want to achieve fiscal glide path and have 4.5%, I think probably from a government standpoint, it will be, from an economy standpoint, it will be better spent in these areas.
Very clearly, Rajiv Memani, we are days away from the union budget, and we'll see how the government and the finance minister choose to respond to that. But clearly, growth needs to be brought back.
Yes.
And I had the SBI chairman say that the house view of SBI is that there will be up to a 75 basis points cut in interest rates during the year. So
that will have a big impact, and I think it's much needed. I think that will have a great impact.
Wonderful talking to you, Rajiv. Thank you very much for your time. With that, it's a wrap on this session. We'll be back with more. Until then, goodbye.
Thank you.
Hello and welcome. I'm joined on a cold winter morning at the India Today Business